In this demonstration you will learn how to build a layout with a grid. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've opened the main window SAML file of the customer's application. You can download the code that I use here from the course homepage on pluralsight.com. As you can see, on the grid in this main window, I have defined already 2 column definitions and 4 row definitions. The grid contains also elements for this main window. So when you scroll down, you can see here a menu element that contains a menu item with a header view. This menu item itself contains 2 menu items with the headers, customers and products. As you can see, the headers contain underscores. These underscores are not visible in the running application. They are here for keyboard navigation. The first character after the underscore can be used to navigate to a menu item with the alternate key. So a user can press in our application the keys alternate and V to open up the view menu item. You can also see here how you can define comments in SAML. You can actually use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+KU to uncomment and the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+KC to make a comment. I usually add a space at the beginning and also at the end, as I find this a bit more readable. Now, after the menu, you can see here the header, which is a horizontal stack panel. It contains an image with a logo PNG file, a text block with the text Customers app, and another text block with the text version 1. When you look at the Solution Explorer, you can see there is an images folder that contains actually that logo PNG file that is used in the header. Then, when you scroll down further, you can see here the so-called customer list, which is the navigation of this application. It is a stack panel that contains here a horizontal stack panel with 3 buttons to add and delete customers and to move the navigation to the other side. Beside this stack panel with the 3 buttons, there is also a list view with 3 list view items. For now, these list view items represent the customers. Then, after this stack panel with the navigation, you see another stack panel for the customer details. It contains labels and text boxes and a checkbox. Finally, this main window SAML file contains a status bar with a single status bar item that has the text Wired Brain Coffee. Now, as you can see, on none of these elements in the grid, attached properties of the grid are set. This means all these elements are in the first column and in the first row of the grid, and they are drawn on top of each other in the order like they are defined in SAML. So the last item, which is the status bar, is drawn on top. Let's take a look at this in the designer. So I split here the SAML code editor and the designer vertically. Now you can see the designer, and here in the first cell you can see the status bar text that is drawn on top of all the other controls. Now let's change this. Let's scroll up in this file. Now first, I want to show you that you can also define the size of the window in the designer. So instead of changing here height and width that are used by the window at runtime, you can set properties on the window that are used only by the designer in Visual Studio. To set the width of the window in the designer, you write d::design width, and you can set it, for example, to 500, and now you see it changed in the designer. You can also set d::design height, and let's set this one, for example, to 600. Now it looks like that. So you can adjust it to a size that you need. Now let's go down here and let's select here Fit All, and then it just looks good on my screen. Now let's actually position the elements. Maybe we should start with the status bar, as this one sits on top of all the rest. So let's scroll down. Here at the bottom, let's put the cursor on the status bar element and note that you can see the 4 rows and the 2 columns of the grid in the designer. Let's put the status bar into grid row 3, which is the 4th row as the index starts at 0. It should also go across the 2 columns. To do this, you set on the status bar the grid column span property. This allows you to span an element across 2 or more columns. There is also a row span property that allows you to span an element across 2 or more rows. The default of row span and column span is 1, which means if you set this property to 1, nothing will happen. Let's set it in this case to 2, and now the status bar goes across the 2 columns. Now let's scroll up. Let's start at the top with the menu. The menu is great where it is, but it should also go across 2 columns. So on the menu, let's set grid column span to 2. Now let's go down to the header. The header needs to go into the second row that has the index 1. So let's set here grid row 1, and now you see in the designer the header, and on the header let's also set grid column span to 2, and now it goes across the 2 columns. Next is here the stack panel for the customer list. This one needs to go into grid row 2, which is the 3rd row. You can see it now here. Finally, you need to put the customer details stack panel into this cell, which is grid row 2 and grid column 1. So let's set on this stack panel grid.row to 2 and grid.column to 1. Now you can see this stack panel with the labels and text boxes for first name and last name is in this cell in grid row 2 and grid column 1. Great! Now every element is in the right row and in the right column. The next step is to set the correct sizes on the row definitions and on the column definitions. Let's do this in the next clip.